You remember that conversation we had about grabbing that house up in Napa?
I want a house. I want a family. I want our kids to be able to play outside. This is it, 6741. This is so pretty.
I'm Charlie Peck.
Scott Howard.
Welcome to Foxglove. My great-great-grandfather built this house. It's the only house I ever lived in. I put my soul into it. Foxglove is yours now.
We'll take good care of her.
I felt bad for him.
I feel bad for Charlie. Feel good for us.
You're not gonna believe this. Charlie is outside cutting the grass.
What?
Did you just get this out of the garage?
That's where I keep it.
Thought you'd be gone by now.
That's hard. Hard to say goodbye.
I keep hearing this creaking sound.
Manny, it's an old house.
You just bought the Peck house, right?
Yeah.
Charlie's quite a guy. Just don't look too close under the mask. His wife died in that house. Mrs. Charlie took Mr. Charlie's shotgun in her mouth. At least that's how Charlie explained it.
Hey! Stop drilling holes in my house!
The man acts like the house still belongs to him.
Honey, he's lonely.
You okay?
It's not your house. This guy is dangerous. I've seen the way that he looks at you.
Now Charlie is after me.
Stay away from my wife.
If you lost everything that was important, and then you had a chance to get it back, wouldn't you just go for it? Lights out!
It's okay. Okay, we're not dying today.
Everything I do for us.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Mimi of MimiCuteLips.com. I'm a lifestyle blogger.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I'm Kayla Alexandria of Moments in Melanin. I'm here representing MadFlavor TV today.
Okay.
Hi, Michael. I'm Patrice Tart, and I'm with MillBuzz.com, which is a millennial-based entertainment and lifestyle publication.
Okay.
And I'm Rara Lay. I own a media outlet that focuses on bridging the gap between African entertainment and American entertainment. So I focus on international artists as well as American celebrities as well.
Word. All right. Let's do it.
So back on me. Well, we can go ahead and just start. You can just give us just a brief overview about the movie.
Well, The Intruder is, it's a thriller whereby this couple, played by Megan Good and myself, are trying to pursue the American dream. You know, we're trying to buy our first house and start our family as newlyweds, and that American dream turns into a nightmare. It really does. It turns into a nightmare. Dennis Quaid's character is Charlie Peck, and he's the owner of the house until we purchase it from him, and then he has a special connection that we're not quite aware of when we buy it, and throughout the course of the movie we learn more and more. Well, at least I did. And then Megan comes around later.
Right. Real late.
Yeah, she comes around a little later, but once she gets it, she's in. She's in. So yeah.
Okay. So as you mentioned, Charlie has quite a bit of an attachment to his home, a little bit of a separation anxiety thing going on there.
Separation.
I think to a degree, minus all the psychopathic behavior, we can all kind of relate to being attached to something or some place or an experience. Has there ever been a time when you were really attached to something? Not to that extent,
No.
but were you ever attached to an experience or a time in your life or a place or a thing that you had struggle separating from?
No.
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 Pretty good with change?
Actually, I'm kind of the opposite of that, meaning I don't like clutter, whether it's physical or not. mental, emotional. I don't like any of that. So I try to purge myself of anything that is, when it begins to feel like clutter. I just feel like you can't receive a blessing if you're not ready. And if you haven't gotten rid of all of the judgment and the grudges and everything. Now, I can still hold the grudge. But I had to learn over time that, you know, you can't, it's not going to serve you well.
Right.
And so I feel like there's a theme in the movie of out with the old, in with the new. And while I don't necessarily adhere to that in my daily life in terms of, you know, all aspects of life, but I feel like there is something valuable in that and valid in terms of just embracing what's new, because, you know, you will kind of get left behind if you don't, i.e., you know, technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
All right, so your chemistry with Megan Good on camera was really good. So how was it playing with her?
Well, I guess, you know, if it came out good on screen, it was all worth it, right? The good thing about Megan and I working in the same movies before is that we got to know each other. Even though we didn't have any scenes together in those pieces, we got to know each other. And we did press tours for both movies, and we really, you know, spoke a lot during those press tours and got to know each other. And so by the time we got into this movie, it was almost like we had worked together, we've known each other, and so the foundation was there. We were able to jump right into Scott and Annie. We didn't have to spend time being like, so how are your kids? Do you have a pet? We didn't have to ask any of those questions. We got right into Scott and Annie, and we really worked hard to try and make them a real couple.
Yes.
You know, I think there's flaws there, there's issues there, but you know, in the trailer, it just looks like we're, you know, marital bliss.
Right.
Everybody starts off.
True. Going on 5 years. It's true.
You know what I mean? Like,
I feel you.
yeah, relationships are interesting.
It's work.
It's work. So, you know, we try to do that. In fact, the scene where we actually get into it, I remember like kind of adding some of that stuff about therapy and, you know, making sure that it was rooted in reality and stuff that people are really struggling with in their relationships. And I think it really holds well in the film.
So I actually wanted to backtrack a little bit because I enjoyed seeing you in The Intruder, but contrary to your role in The Perfect Guy, it's as if you just essentially switched places. How was it preparing for both roles, and what was the experience just kind of being like the exact opposite?
Good question. You know, I think for me, The Perfect Guy was a chance for me to break the mold that I had established prior to that, which was being the romantic comedy guy. So then when I wanted to break that mold by doing The Perfect Guy, and when I did The Perfect Guy, I think I shook it.
No, it was good.
Everybody,
you picked me out of it.
That's everybody thinks I want to, like, you know, kill people. Even when I did Being Mary Jane, everybody was like, "You better not kill my girl."
Right.
Yeah, I'm not. She's the lead of the show. I'm not going to kill her. Different character.
Right.
But now I have that reputation, right? So in this one, it's like kind of a throwback to me going back to my somewhat heroic roots. You know, trying to be somewhat of the moral compass of this piece. But at the same time, what I love about Scott is he's kind of the anti-hero, right? Like he can't fight. He can't fix a light bulb. He's kind of like one of these new men that exist out here that can't work with their hands on much.
Right.
You know, he's like, yeah, just get somebody to do that. And just pay somebody to come do that. You know what I mean? And it's like,
it's crazy.
So we're losing a lot of those men, and you know, I think that's one of the things that Dion really wanted me to kind of embody was not being Ealy in this movie, not being heroic, kind of being a regular guy, and then seeing where we end up at the end. And it was fun to kind of play that guy because he was a bit more snarky and a bit more. He's nothing like me. which was great.
Yeah.
Which was great, yeah.
So is that part of the appeal of the character? Because it's nothing.
Yes, I didn't say that. Yes. Answer your question. Yes. Part of the appeal of taking this character was that it put me on the opposite end of the spectrum this time. So instead of embracing, the sociopath, I'm fighting against the sociopath, especially to protect my wife. And I think when you see the film, you realize if you don't want to protect Megan, you have no heart.
Yeah.
She's about the sweetest thing.
Right.
Man, so yeah, it was fun. It was a big appeal for me to kind of go to the opposite and to do it opposite Dennis Quaid. An iconic American actor who, I knew I could come in and learn something from.
Right.
That was all a big draw for me.
So then how do you shape the characters? The various characters that you play? Like, how do you kind of clear your mind of that character when it's time to move on to a new one?
You don't ever shake them all, in my opinion. I think you embrace them and they all become a part of you. But, it's it's easier now with kids, actually, to kind of just walk away from it. When I finished this movie, my daughter may have been, I think she turned 1 right after we finished this movie. And so we had to celebrate her birthday. And, for me, it was like, the minute they call you daddy, you kind of snap out of it and realize, that guy's gone, that guy's gone. And you just, there's nothing like family that grounds you more. It's the responsibility, taking out the trash,
ground you real quick, right?
Stinky diapers, all of that kind of
humbling
shakes you out.
Reminds you that
that movie life is over. Get down. And then your wife will remind you too. That stuff doesn't work off camera.
Right, I'm sure.
So, now your real issues come back.
Right.
It helps you shake it off. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let me see. Question. So your character Scott, he had a really strong way that he felt about guns because of the experience that he had losing his brother to gun violence. And, you and Charlie were opposites in every way. And in that way, Charlie had tons of guns. You were absolutely against having guns even on your property. Just in our society as people of color, is that a way that you feel? Do you relate more with Charlie's character as it relates to owning firearms, or more with Scott's character?
Intricate question requires an intricate answer. One of my favorite moments in the movie is that moment when Charlie says to me, "You don't need an alarm system, you need a gun." There's a prevailing theory in this country that guns are always the answer. Yet when a bunch of Muslims were gunned down in New Zealand, no one said they should have had guns. There's hypocrisy in that. In my opinion, I don't believe that they are the answer. I'm not as extreme as Scott is about guns, but I also haven't dealt with the same level of post-traumatic stress that Scott has dealt with. Now, I did have a cousin who was killed by gun violence at the age of 30, and it rocked my world. But it hasn't led me to the same level of post-traumatic stress that I think the character of Scott is portraying in this film. Scott's PTSD is deeply rooted in losing his brother. And I think everything about Charlie represents his true disdain for what these things can do to someone's life. And so, as far as that argument, I think it requires a much deeper dive than kind of and I'm not trying to call this a surface level interview, but to a certain extent it is, because the gun debate is that it needs to be a longer debate. It needs to be a more in-depth debate. It's kind of like the whole thing with Nipsey Hussle. It's like people are like, should he still have been living in the hood? Guys, what killed Nipsey Hussle is so much deeper than just where you live. It is systemic issues that are facing different communities of color throughout the world that needs to be addressed. We can't just talk about it in superficial terms of, brothers got to move out. Go get gated community. We get shot there too. So I don't look at it like that. But in terms of the movie, I don't think it's a statement per se about gun control, but I do think it causes one to ask the question. And I think obviously it triggered something in you, and I think it will trigger a conversation about it. Hopefully it can trigger a much deeper conversation about it.
Thank you. All right, awesome. So you've been in a lot of great movies. Which film or films have really stretched you as an actor that has challenged you or made you feel uncomfortable? Because they say that when you become uncomfortable, that's when you grow.
It's true. Let's see. What has stretched me? A Sleeper Cell. Sleeper Cell has stretched me. Perfect Guy. Actually, Perfect Guy, yes, but the following even more. To embrace a serial killer is it's a little bit different, you know what I mean, than being a guy who's just kind of crazy about a girl. To embrace someone who has a lust for death took me to a place of darkness that I didn't know I could go to, and that was the challenge. And man, was it fun. I don't know if that means I have some therapy to go to, but
maybe that was therapy.
I don't have any desire to, kill people at all. I have a healthy concept of fear, and don't want to do it. But it was nice to kind of live in his shoes and just the powerfulness. There's a lot of power in being able to take someone's life without hesitation, because you can just, it's not normal, right? It's not how I grew up. It's not, there's no compassion there, but to actually get off on it, like it's sexual to you, to actually take someone's life, man, that was a dark place, and apparently that worked. And I was shocked at how many people really liked that character, Theo. And that was, it was fun and disturbing at the same time. It also, I had conflicts with it because I didn't feel wonderful about putting that imagery out there.
Right.
And that's one of the hardest things about what I do is sometimes, like for Color Girls, that imagery is really bad.
Yes, yeah.
And so you have to ask yourself, at what cost are you doing this, and why are you doing this?
Right.
And again, trying to show what war can do to a normal, healthy human being. Sometimes you gotta make that leap and just hope that people are intelligent and strong enough to kind of understand. This is, and I wish we could have shown who he was before, but it wasn't his play, right? It's a play about the women, and so anyway, you have this character, and the real good ones that stretch you will tend to compromise your integrity and tend to compromise your personal beliefs.
Right.
And I definitely feel like I've gone there a couple of times, and I think those are pretty much the roles that I can think of offhand that have made me kind of go there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think a lot of people have touched on, I think therapy has come up quite a few times. And even with these different roles, like where you said they could have possibly stretched you and everything, have you ever had to go and receive therapy after playing a certain role, or just like to really get stuff out after, because maybe it evoked some type of emotion or anything?
I'm an advocate for therapy for
Yeah.
everyone.
So am I. So that's
For
great.
everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. I go to therapy as a husband and father. I go to therapy as an actor.
Yeah.
It's been one of the most helpful things that has helped me to cope with the ups and downs of not only the industry but life in general.
Right.
I never someone's calling. I'm joking. You want me to tell them you can call them back?
They'd probably be happy to hear you, but it might be a bill collector. I don't know.
Hello? With who?
That might be me.
Yeah, no, he's in an interview right now. Can you call me back? Oh, she just hung up.
Probably blocked or blessed.
Did you record it?
Malik, what is going on with that screensaver?
Technology.
Essentially, if you've ever had to receive therapy after
Yes, so I said I'm a big advocate. Yeah, I mean, there was a time, I remember I was doing Sleeper Cell second season, and I was feeling really heroic.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this story. I don't know if you've heard this before. I think I've said it once. I saw a girl get her purse taken outside a gym in Los Angeles, and the guys got in the car and drove off quick, and I chased them.
Oh. Did
I'm
you
not
catch
a cop.
that?
I'm not a cop. I just played an FBI agent on TV. I chased them for about 5 minutes before I realized.
What am I
doing?
Stop it. They are criminals. You are not a hero. Take your ass back to the gym and do not. What are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
So
did you at least get the
first
plate
time,
number?
huh?
Did you at least get the plate number?
No, I was too busy driving, and it was just like, dude, this is not a scene.
Right.
What are you doing? And I laughed about it, but I also said, I think I gotta go get some help. Clearly I went too far, and it could have cost me my life.
Yeah.
So, there's a way to get caught up in the characters, and also I think there's a time of detox. Therapy is good, but there's also a time of detox. And typically after movies or projects that take you there, like was The Following or even Perfect Guy, I'll come off of that. Even when I did Jacob's Ladder, which hopefully will be out later this year. Movies like that, projects like that, where you go to a darker place, you tend to need to just go be by yourself for a while. Whether that's the desert, the beach, the woods, just go kind of tap out and not take that energy to your family, to your kids, and all of that, so that you can go back to being normal. So there's a way to transition back to reality.
Right.
Okay, so what do you want, what do you want the audience to kind of take away from the movie?
I never want an audience to take away anything other than what they did.
Okay.
I think it's hard to try and predict what an audience will take from the movie, because from what I've seen, we all take something different from every single project. If I was to say, what do you think of Mo Better Blues right now? You might have a different interpretation based on whatever it is that you've gone through and however it affected your life, right? So when someone asked me, after I saw a screening of The Intruder, they were like, is it good? I was like, I hope so. Because I can no longer tell what's good, because what makes money isn't always good.
That's true.
And sometimes what's good doesn't always make money. So it doesn't mean it wasn't good. It just means that for whatever reason, it didn't resonate with people to the point where they went and told their friends and saw it 3 times. So, you know, for me, it's like, take what you want from this, but I will say that ultimately the underlying theme is listen to your husband. I'm kidding. Once you see the movie, you get that joke. But I think, I will say this. At the time when I made this movie, my wife and I were renovating our house. And I remember being so grateful that we were renovating our house because we knocked it down and built it up from scratch. And we just had there was nobody else, like it's ours. Like no one else lived there before, and there were ghosts in the house.
They're gone.
They're gone. Even if they're hanging out, they're like, this is nice. I like the new digs. So, you know, it's cool. And I remember dating this one girl who came to my house prior to renovating. And I remember her saying, you got ghosts in your house. I said, that's cool.
Oh, wow.
I was like, but, you know, clearly you and I ain't gonna last. But, because if you see them, I don't know if this is gonna work. You know what I mean? But I was like, you know, as long as they stay where they're supposed to stay, I'm cool. You know what I mean? Just don't show yourself and we'll be fine. You can stay here as long as you want. Just don't show yourself. That's all I ask. But yeah, so it's nice. It's nice to do that, and at the same time, you know, I remember us looking. Before we decided to renovate, we looked, and there was always something. I always took issue with like taking somebody else's house, you know. And when I did this movie, it all resonated for me.
Now you know why.
Yeah, man, cool. Yeah. You do what you got to do, but you know, sometimes older ain't better.
It's so funny that you say that because when I left the screen and I actually called my husband because we didn't renovate our home, but we had built it from the ground. And I remember, and it was our first home. And I remember thinking at that time, like, this is kind of cool not having to buy someone else's house. I don't really like old bones and all that. So, you know what I mean? Right. You never know what's going on behind the walls and the structure behind the walls. Right. Yeah. Because I love HGTV, okay? Yeah. And so I know that renovating is not always easy and, you know, fixer-uppers and stuff. So when I saw the movie, I did think about that. So it's really funny that you would say that.
It's timely in that way.
Yes.
It's a very timely.
Seriously.
And it'll make anybody who's looking for a new home, I guarantee you when they leave this film, they'll be like,
I'm an advocate for get a new house.
How about some new construction? Yeah, why don't we try new construction?
Yeah, I get it. I was definitely able to relate to Annie and Scott on that.
Okay, good.
But and speaking of homes, DC area is home for you. What do you miss the most? Because I understand you're in LA now. So what do you miss the most about the DC area? Old Bay?
So
you
that's the first thing that came
to
my
my
mind.
God.
You know what? There was this restaurant. There's a restaurant in my neighborhood. It's now closed. But what made the nostalgia of them was one time I went in there and got like a chicken sandwich and some fries or something, and they put Old Bay on their fries. And I was so excited, so happy, because I had forgotten about it, right? Yeah. So now there's Old Bay in my house. But it was like, I was like, I forgot that, you know, where I come from, you can put this on not just anything, you can put on anything. So it's in the eggs, it's in the fries, it's on everything. But it was like, I think that was the first time I was like, oh man, I really miss home. And, but to answer your question, what do I miss the most? This was a great place to grow up. I don't know if it still is, but it was a great place to grow up. And the thing I probably miss most is seeing middle to upper class black folks, you know, a lot of them. A lot of them. It's kind of like Atlanta in that way, you know. And there was an emphasis, one more thing, sorry. There's an emphasis on education here that doesn't, I don't know if it still exists, but when I was growing up, you know, because there's a bunch of universities here, everybody was talking about their education. Everybody cared about their education. Where I am now, there's not so much of an emphasis on the education unless you're trying to, you know, slide them in.
Right.
By your way into the system.
Okay.
Yeah, you give it a shake right here.
Yeah.
So there's emphasis on getting your kids in school, but
Without the
but the
integrity.
kids themselves, I don't know. Maybe it's this new generation. Maybe they don't care about school as much. But we grew up with a desire to be educated, and I miss that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say the same. I grew up here too, and I can totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I grew up in PG County.
Yeah.
You know,
What part?
I grew up in Fort Washington.
Okay.
I live in Upper Marlboro now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I'm down the street in Brandywine.
Hey.
Y'all want to do pictures now? Or?
All right, so just one more question. So you mentioned Jacob's Ladder, and I know that Being Mary Jane is coming back. So any other projects that we can look forward to seeing from you?
Yes. There's one more. I just did another movie with. So the director of Intruder is Dion Taylor.
Okay.
And I just did another movie with him in the fall called Fatale. And that's another thriller, actually. I'm doing a lot of
You're getting good at this.
but this is me and Hilary Swank and Mike Coulter. And this one is it's beautiful.
Nice.
It's a noir thriller and it's beautiful. I just saw some footage from it the other day. It's stunning.
Nice.
It's stunning. And Hillary is incredible to work with.
Okay.
Incredible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and so just to wrap it up, essentially, a lot of people do look to you for inspiration, and they get discouraged in their careers and everything they're doing, whether they're an actor or any type of entrepreneur, or whatever industry they're in. What is one obstacle that you have overcome that you knew once you overcome, you're like, I can do anything I really put my mind to?
An obstacle that I've overcome.
We're still working on overcoming.
I think the whole light skin, dark skin thing.
Okay.
I don't subscribe to that.
That's good.
It annoys me to no end when people talk about the differences between light skinned blacks and dark skinned blacks. It annoys me to no end because it perpetuates a stigma that is actually prevalent around the world.
Yeah.
So, dark skinned Indians, light skinned Indians,
Africans too.
Asians.
Everybody.
Hispanic. Everybody.
And it's really, really it's just so sad because it's 2019 and it's we're still kind of dealing with this.
Right.
And, one of the things that I have dealt with is colorism in terms of not being considered black enough. And some people think I got it made because, I got blue eyes. And I'm like, yeah, well, it has hurt me to a certain extent, because sometimes, there's a desire to see someone who's quote unquote really black.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what would make me more black?
Right.
Then now you have to redefine what is black,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, well, if I've been pulled over by the police,
Right.
And thrown out of the car, am I qualified now?
Right.
Am I qualified now? Because I had my share of that growing up here.
Wow.
And so, do I have to be thrown on a cop car to understand what it's like or is it just a knowledge of your history?
Right.
Because I got that here too.
Right.
So, if you understand the history of our people, then I think you can understand that, we all definitely, I'm not denying that to a certain extent, light-skinned blacks have definitely benefited from some preferential treatment, but it don't stop some of the discrimination.
Right.
I'm here to tell you, you can still catch hell.
Right.
You can still catch hell.
True.
And at the same time, I feel like, as much as I may have gotten a role because I was easier to make the transition, for white folks to see me and say it's easier to make that transition. I've also lost out on some roles because I wasn't, you know, I wasn't interested. You know, like I wasn't dark enough. I didn't identify as black on camera. And it's like, well, let's talk about that because, you know, Malcolm was lighter than me. You ever question his blackness?
Nope.
Ever. No.
You would not.
Ever. If you did, you got dealt with.
Right. Okay.
You got dealt with. So, I mean, in that sense, you know, but I think the same thing holds true, like I said, for other cultures. You know, you're Indian, Middle Eastern, you know, it doesn't matter. The lighter, darker thing has been perpetuated by most, you know, white people. And you have to say, look, we're done with this, because that's a way to divide and conquer. We're done with this. And so that's the thing I think I probably had to struggle the most with to try and overcome. And I still fight that battle, like last week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's still going on.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Will you take some pictures with us?
Can I keep my clothes on?